I'm Regina Gelzer. As Paul said, I am a bankruptcy attorney, but I do have another aspect to my practice, and that's kind of what I want to focus on today. My other practice aspect is real estate. And so I keep a very close eye on what goes on in the real estate market, particularly residential, which is what I do. We are having record numbers of foreclosures. Part of it, I think, is due to kind of a bottleneck that we had during the pandemic when foreclosure actions weren't being filed or weren't being processed because of the shutdowns. So we have a lot of them coming up now. We have a lot of people who, unfortunately, due to circumstances in the economy, have fallen behind, have fallen default, and are now in foreclosure. And another thing that we have going on is what happens to those properties when they're foreclosed. Bank properties that are sitting empty because they're foreclosed, nobody's living in them, nobody's buying them. We have a lot of that going on. But what seems to be even more of the trend is that we have investors coming in and buying those properties, going as expensive rentals or prohibitively high-priced sales. And it's a problem because it's disrupting homeownership in our communities all over the state of New Jersey. There are no little starter homes available. If you're a young couple starting out, or if you want to downsize, there is nothing out there for you. They are all investor owned. Families that had a step on the property ladder are now off it. And interestingly enough, the state of New Jersey has decided to do something about it. I know, who would have expected? We have a new foreclosure law. It was enacted on January 12th of this year, which is the Community Wealth Preservation Act. And the Community Wealth Preservation Act specifically targets foreclosures by handling them in a way that we haven't seen before. Ordinarily, property goes to foreclosure. Homeowner has no resources to buy it back at the sheriff's sale. Usually, that's the way it happens. Because if you could afford the property, you would. But now you're dealing with having to pay an upset price for this property, and that's where people are falling off the property ladder. The Community Wealth Preservation Act changes the way that works. It's setting up a new system where homeowners have a right of first refusal at that sheriff's sale. If they can come up with 3.5% to put down on the day of sale, and then come up with the rest of the funding in 90 days, that property's theirs. They can get it back out of foreclosure. They have the right of first refusal if their families have the right of first refusal. If they are deceased, their next of kin has the right of first refusal on that property. And then there's a right of second refusal, and that is held by nonprofit community development corporations, which exactly what it sounds like. These are nonprofits that are set up to help people to get these properties back out of foreclosure. They can also purchase the properties themselves if the homeowners are unwilling or unable to come up with the 3.5% and the other funding. And this is the biggest change in the foreclosure laws that we've seen in certainly in the course of my practice. I don't know about yours, John. Yeah, it's huge. You might have some concerns about what happens to the properties after they're purchased. Well, there's a stipulation about that too. They must be owner-occupied for 8 years. You can't buy the property and immediately flip it. You can't buy it and rent it out. You got to live there. I would imagine if you can refinance whatever loan you've gotten, or find some other source of funding, you can probably do it in less than 8 years. But it's designed to prevent properties being flipped, which they are.
Rich, I got a question for you.
Sure.
If somebody in bankruptcy comes up with that 3.5%, how are they going to qualify for a loan to get to finance the rest of it?
They're not. Not all people in foreclosure are also in bankruptcy. There are people who may be able to call upon family members, upon friends, and they can apply to these nonprofit community development corporations for funding. I would imagine that they are not traditional lenders. People who are losing homes in foreclosure aren't necessarily in bankruptcy. They may have had some temporary disruption to income. When you go into default, when you fail to make a mortgage payment, the bank can stop accepting any payment from you. You're in default. They don't have to take anything from you, not partial payments, not payments later. As soon as you go into default, they can start moving toward foreclosure and not accept your payments, which means you get farther and farther behind. Say I'm temporarily out of work and I can't make my mortgage payment. Okay, so that goes on, say for a month or two. The month number 3, I can make my mortgage payments again. I got a new job, I'm fine. But my mortgage company doesn't necessarily have to accept it at that point. They can start the foreclosure process right away. So here I am, I've got money to give the bank, but they're not taking it. Usually you can work something out with a lender under those circumstances. But if they take it all the way to foreclosure, this is a way to get your property back. That's really what I want to talk about today. But questions?
I got a quick question.
Okay.
Do you do real estate law?
Yes, I do.
Is that part of? Do you do closings?
Yeah, I do residential purchases and sales.
I might have some.
She's excellent at it, trust me.
Oh, thank you.
Is it?
Anybody thinking about having an attorney for a transaction, that's the lady you want right there.
Oh, thank you. My 2 practices seem to interlock quite a bit. And it was almost a necessity for me to do real estate if I was going to do bankruptcy, and the other way around. They seem to be inextricably twined. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.